what's really exciting is that each of the pieces that we have in the collection, every time we make one, the artisan mixes the colours specifically for that piece. So it's a really highly crafted process.
Hi, and welcome to the Design Pataki podcast, a show that deconstructs the Indian and international design world with leading industry experts. I'm Esha Gupta, the founder of Design Pataki, and through our podcast, we aim to promote thoughtful and incisive conversations on design, art, and architecture. In this episode, we sit down with Alice Cicolini and Revathi Kant, Chief Design Officer at Titan Company, to explore a landmark moment in Indian fine jewellery, its first ever creative collaboration with a globally celebrated designer. Inspired by the layered architecture of Lhasa, the collection reimagines enamel through a modern sculptural lens, brought to life with a refined palette of feminine colours and bold forms, crafted for the creatively inclined. This conversation uncovers how history, ornamentation, and design intersect to create pieces that feel both intimate and architectural. Thank you, Revathi and Alice, for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk about this collaboration between Zoya and Alice, of course, and really uncover how this came about, talk about the collection, and of course design, because that's what we're all here to talk about. How did this collaboration came about? I mean, Zoya and Alice, how did we bring these two worlds together?
Yeah, and you know, you wouldn't believe, it was such a casual meeting. I was in London and I met Alice one hot sunny afternoon, and we just looked at, you know, some of her products and some of her designs. And what I realized, that her brand is rooted in celebrating enamel artistry. And also, when I look at her designs, she's able to depict that ideas and motives, when they travel, they truly transform in different cultures. That really struck a chord with me. And, you know, Zoya design language is all about artistry, it's about emotion, it's about cultural heritage, which resonates with today's woman's inner journey. And that's very core for Zoya. And I could connect the two. I said, if we were to do a collaboration, you know, what magic it would create. And that's exactly what's happened. We have been able to create this capsule of about 19 products, which are limited edition, and it truly defies geography.
You know, I've been reading about the inspiration behind it, and it really traverses so many lands. And how did this journey start, and where did it, you know, through the process take you?
You know, in my own work as a designer, I've always been interested in that story. You know, how patterns and colours and ideas traverse vast landscapes. But I've always had this real interest in these kind of extraordinary Victorian women who have kind of gone off travelling around the world, and maybe they've become painters, or perhaps they just went to be on their journey. And then I discovered Alexandra David-Neel.
Okay.
And she became my muse.
Tell me more about her. Like, I believe she's a very interesting story which kind of inspired a lot of the pieces and her travels as well.
Well, she was born in Paris,
okay,
and raised by a father who was very open to the fact that his daughter had a fascination for cultural stories and heritage. And when she married, she said to her husband, you know, let me just go. I'm going to get this out of my system, this desire to travel. I'll see you in a year. And 16 years later, she returned to Paris, having gone on the most extraordinary journey. She landed in Sri Lanka. She travels up the east coast of India, really exploring herself, her identity. And then she arrives in Lhasa as the first woman to ever be invited into the Dalai Lama's palace.
The first woman, wow.
Yeah. That's quite an extraordinary story.
In like the
19th century, late 19th century.
Okay.
A little bit around the same time as my great-grandfather was leaving Italy to go on his own journey. So, you know, I think that kind of idea of travel and movement has been an important part of my personal story as well. So I saw in Alexandra a muse that was perfect for me as a designer, but equally was the Zoya woman.
Absolutely. I think in Alexandra's journey, we found our muse. You know, she's been so bold. She left her family. For 16 years, she has been exploring. So courageous, and she took on a journey of discovering herself, and that became a metaphor for our Zoya woman, who's so bold and who's so focused on setting her own path, and she does it so gracefully. And there is a kind of, you know, quiet strength all about her, and she is our Zoya woman. the woman who is on her inner journey to discover herself.
I think we're all Zoya women in that
Yes,
case.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We're all Zoya
We're all
women. We're trying to discover ourselves.
You know, which also leads me to, we were chatting earlier and you were telling me about how the architecture behind each piece has been a very strong inspiration. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
You know, architecture's always been really important for me in my work. It's been one of the key sources of design research that I do across the collections that I've made in the last 16 years. So the Tibetan buildings are, you know, full of these kind of stratified layers of colour and pattern, and some of it is geometric and some of it is decorative. And it's such a kind of confident way of working. So it's sort of sung out to me straight away, really, as being a really core part of how we wanted to express the pieces.
And Revathi, you love design as well. Architecture and design is something you're deeply passionate about.
Absolutely. In fact, architecture has been a very strong pillar in Zoya's design journey. So even in the past, when we've had collections like Banaras, which were inspired by, you know, the temples, ancient temples in Banaras, or whether it is Pezzo di Arte, the collection, or Samave, which is an, you know, autobiography collection of Zoya, it is all about architecture.
You know, art is something which is very close to my heart. And when I look at these pieces, it feels like they're wearable art. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm so glad you're saying that you feel these pieces are like wearable art, because that's what Zoya's attempt is all about. When we make jewelry pieces, we make them as wearable art. When we talk of wearable art, you know, it's really the convergence of color and craft coming together, and classical silhouettes getting transformed to something which is not imagined before. And when we talk of wearable art, first thing, it has to be wearable in the sense, you know, for the wearer, it's got to be comfortable, not too heavy, and all of that. That part is the wearable part. While it is that, it also has to be avant-garde. Zoya's technical prowess helps us to achieve that, and that's very important in the making of jewelry. And we very strongly believe every piece of Zoya is a wearable art.
I think we all relate to heavy jhumkas. I think
Yes.
we all had that moment where your ears are pulling down with Indian jewelry in particular.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important that
Yes.
one can really last through the evening and not have
Absolutely.
to, you know, pull them out and worry about where you keep them at the end of the night. Would you say Meenakari and enamel work have a strong influence on the Alice and Zoya collection?
Actually, when I first began working in Meenakari, you know, one of the things that I felt really strongly that I could contribute, I suppose, was a dialogue around colour. You know, Meenakari has a very fixed and, you know, ancient set of colours, you know, and then part of that is because it's glass enamel, and so when we're working with lacquer enamel, which is what we've used here, the great beauty of it as a material is that the whole Pantone suddenly opens up for you. You can do whatever you want, and it was one of the things that we really, as Revathi says, we really focused on was actually getting that right and mixing and mixing and mixing. And what's really exciting is that each of the pieces that we have in the collection, every time we make one, the artisan mixes the colours specifically for that piece. So, you know, it doesn't kind of get mixed in a big batch and sit there. You know, it's a really highly crafted process. In every piece, there's at least 4 people who touch it. You know, enamel is, absolutely.
What meets the eye in this.
Absolutely, yeah.
When we say that we took 5 years to do it, we were really cracking the mechanism of getting it. And so we experimented a lot. So it's a collection which is made in 18 karat gold. It's got uncut diamonds and some bit of color stones wherever required, and beautiful enameling work on these motifs. So if you look at the detailing of the product, I mean, it's so amazing. You got these cherry blossom flowers. Look at the intricate detailing and, you know, the difference in variation in color. This work is painstakingly done by the craftsman to give you something like this. Wow. That's when this piece goes on to, you know, become a Zoya piece, really.
And an artistic piece.
Absolutely. So there is so much of detailing. All of this, to achieve this, it takes a lot. So we don't mind investing these number of years, because finally good things take time to come out.
Of course.
And it's a proud moment for all of us.
I mean, 5 years is a long time, and of course it looks stunning.
So one of the interesting things for me is once Zoya had kind of expressed a colour palette idea, you know, that really helped in terms of finding then the symbols and the patterns and inspiration that then fed into the jewellery. So the cherry blossom is a really key part of the story. You know, in Japan it symbolises spring, obviously, but also kind of renewal, rebirth. You find it on kimonos for young women as they kind of turn 16 and enter into society. And that's really the story about this kind of like blossoming of feminine identity, which felt really perfect for this collection. And then we looked at the gong, partly because it has such kind of resonance with Indian jewellery forms anyway, but also because I really wanted to get across what the kind of sensory experience of arriving in Lhasa might have been for Alexandra, you know? And then these kind of like beautiful little details of the chevron, which is a core part of my design language. I've used it in so many of my collections, but you know, the chevron was one of the very earliest forms of symbol, and actually what it really means is water, which is why it's you see it in the astrological sign for Aquarius, for example. But you know, of course, sea and water is how we would have travelled in those times, and so it was, you know, another way of really kind of telling Alexandra's story is to kind of to put that in there, but also it's a nod to my passions, you know. And you know, I don't know if you know this, but in Hindi, Meenakari also means secret. So it's all about really the conversation that you're having with your jewellery that nobody else can see. So the back of the jewel is as important as the front.
So that's the secret.
Then that's the secret, yeah. And so, you know, it was it's actually really fun to have been able to kind of play with the reverse, because I really want people to, you know, if they feel like it, to wear it the other way around.
I think this one as well, like everything you're wearing has
detail on the back.
Yeah.
Thank you, Revathi and Alice, for a wonderful conversation about the collection. But now moving on to something a little more fun and about both of you to get to know us better. Going to do a little rapid fire. Hope you all are ready.
Ready as where we're going to be.
Yeah, and we'll be quick. Let's be quick, and whatever comes to your mind first is yours. Who is more of a perfectionist?
Both.
Yeah, both.
So.
Both. All right. Which one best describes the collection? Gong, Tibetan architecture, or cherry blossom?
Cherry blossom for me.
The architecture for me.
What's harder to design, a ring or earrings?
Earrings every time.
Earrings.
Earrings. What's the one feeling you hope lingers when someone wears a piece of the collection?
Cultural memories.
Alice?
Talismanic feminine energy.
Which piece in the collection feels most like wearable art?
Jhumki.
Jhumki.
Where do your ideas usually begin? A sketchbook or a mood board?
Mood board.
In the world.
I like that. And my last one, design in 3 words.
Desirable. Inspiration. Narrative.
That's interesting.
How am I going to follow that?
The 3 C's.
Intent, poetry, emotion.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both of you. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great being here. Thanks a lot.
So much fun.